Can you give us a question?
Don't be
You're
rude.
attacking us. Can you give us a question?
Don't be rude.
Can you
No,
give
I'm
us
not
a
going to give you a
question?
question. I'm not going to give you a
Can
question.
you stay categorically?
You are fake news.
A heated exchange over scorching allegations. Good evening, I'm Peter Mansbridge, and this is The National.
Information that was false and fake and never happened.
Donald Trump slams reports Russia has blackmail material. We take a critical look at how this story exploded. Author Joseph Boyden, indigenous or not, he reveals what he really feels guilty for. Plus, your retail returns feed a growing business.
In the past, this could have all ended up in landfill.
It was his first news conference in months, and it promised to be rancorous. For the first time, Donald Trump did concede that Russia hacked the Democrats during the election. But his tone turned confrontational when reporters raised that new intelligence report about Trump and Russia that everyone was talking about. The report itself is unsubstantiated, but certain facts are indisputable. The heads of 4 intelligence agencies deemed the information legitimate enough to bring it to the president and the president-elect. They attached a 2-page synopsis of that report to a wider briefing on Russian interference in the election, presented separately last week to Barack Obama and Donald Trump. Part of what the report contains about Trump is salacious. Easy to get distracted by that, but other parts, if true, are far more serious, suggesting a potentially treasonous relationship between officials in Moscow and the Trump campaign. At that newser today, Trump dismissed it all as flat-out false. Paul Hunter begins our coverage from Washington tonight. Paul.
Peter says Trump, fake news, phony stuff. It didn't happen. As the stakes get higher for the president-elect, his denials get stronger, his pushback more forceful. But the allegations and the questions keep coming.
And the President-elect of the United States of America, Donald Trump.
Just for a moment, forget the salacious stuff and consider the most damning allegation that during the campaign, Trump insiders met with Kremlin officials colluding to defeat Hillary Clinton. A potential betrayal of his own country. Said Trump today, nonsense.
It was a group of opponents that got together, sick people, and they put that crap together.
In his first news conference since July, Trump conceded that Russia cyber-attacked the U.S. election.
I think it was Russia.
But on the other allegations, he trashed U.S. intelligence agencies who showed them to him last week. He called the website that published them yesterday verbatim a pile of garbage, and likened himself now to a victim of Nazi Germany.
I think it was disgraceful that the intelligence agencies allowed any information that turned out to be so false and fake out. I think it's a disgrace. And I say that, and that's something that Nazi Germany would have done and did do.
As for the salacious stuff, it's from 2013 when Trump was in Moscow for the Miss Universe contest.
It's Miss Universe in Moscow.
Reportedly all caught on video in a hotel room and blackmail worthy. Said Trump today, in effect, he'd never be so stupid. His view, whenever in foreign hotels, behave.
In those rooms, you have cameras in the strangest places. Cameras that are so small with modern technology, you can't see them and you won't know. You better be careful, or you'll be watching yourself on nightly television. I tell this to people all the time.
CBC isn't reporting the details because they're unsubstantiated. But to be clear, says Trump, didn't happen.
Does anyone really believe that story? I'm also very much of a germaphobe, by the way. Believe me.
But the U.S. intelligence community takes all of it seriously, even if none of it is proven. And though Trump pushed back hard today, it seemed to get under his notoriously thin skin. After he called out CNN for reporting on the story, a CNN journalist tried to rebut.
You are attacking our news organization.
Your organization,
Can you give us a
sir.
chance
Let's
to
go.
ask a question, sir?
Go ahead.
Sir, can
Quiet,
you state,
quiet.
Mr. President-elect,
Go ahead.
Can you state
She's asking a
categorically-
question.
Mr.
Don't be rude.
President-elect, can you give us a question?
Don't be
You're
rude.
attacking us. Can you give us a question?
Don't be rude.
Can you
No, I'm
give
not
us a
going to give you a
question?
question. I'm not going to give you a
Can
question.
you state categorically?
You are fake news.
Sir.
Go ahead.
And so it went. All of it leading to ever louder calls for a thorough investigation. With Donald Trump now just days from the presidency and taking command over many of those who do the investigating. Peter.
All right, Paul, thank you. Russia was quick to respond to the allegations, too, and it wasn't any prettier. Susan Ormiston has that from Moscow.
It's the Miss Universe pageant.
2013, Donald Trump brought the pageant to Moscow. That's fact.
We have as good as I've ever seen in terms of beauty.
But allegations of Trump and salacious events in a Moscow hotel, secretly recorded by Russia's Secret Service, well, that's pulp fiction, according to the Kremlin.
Pulp fiction это называется.
Spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said reports of secret dossiers going back years are fake, nonsense, and there's no compromising material on Trump or on Hillary Clinton. He added the Kremlin doesn't do that kind of thing. But Russia's Secret Service has a history of using surveillance to blackmail, as recently as last year when hidden cameras outed an opposition leader with his mistress. For average Russians, this is common talk.
I don't think that it really matters because everybody is spying a little bit, but it doesn't make any difference.
It does, of course, to Trump.
I was in Russia years ago with the Miss Universe contest.
But no hidden camera tape has surfaced. Trump says there isn't any.
I told many people, be careful, because you don't want to see yourself on television. Cameras all over the place. And again, not just Russia, all over.
The Kremlin deflected pointed questions today on alleged meetups between Russian officials and Trump representatives during the 2016 election campaign, dismissing it all as a smear tactic.
Well, I must say that spying is normal, unfortunately, the normal way of...
Sergei Karaganov, who's advised President Putin on foreign relations, suspects these accusations are false. But
If I were a czar, I would send my hackers to do exactly what they have been accused, for the very simple reason. The United States have been acting like a bully in a bad neighborhood without police.
I don't know that I'm going to get along with Vladimir Putin. I hope I do, but there's a good chance I won't.
Trump is hedging his bets. So is Moscow, sounding more cautious on Trump, bristling at the swirling attacks over hacking and spying. Any potential for warmer relations between the two countries may have to weather a cold front, Peter.
All right, Susan, thank you. As we mentioned earlier, U.S. intelligence leaders clearly believed the source of the intelligence report was credible, even if they couldn't corroborate every detail. But where did it come from, and why is it only getting attention now? Adrian Arsenault has been looking at that.
We're going to win.
Take it back to late spring 2016. Donald Trump on the stump looking certain to be the Republican nominee, but he had enemies. Opponents curious about Russia. By June, a former British spy had been enlisted to dig into Trump's Russian dealings. His sources had a lot to say. The spy was worried enough he went to the FBI in July. Keep digging was the response. He did. His dossier growing with reports of information exchanged between Russian intermediaries and the Trump team. Several of his sources speaking to salacious evidence being held by Moscow. By October, word had spread the FBI knew something about Trump and Russia. Journalist David Korn of Mother Jones was the first to find the former spy.
I was not allowed to talk too much about, in my story, too much about his background and anything that would identify him. So it took a little convincing to get him to talk about this stuff.
The paper published the story just days before the election without outlining the allegations. It couldn't and still can't verify them. Neither can the CBC. The story didn't rattle many at the time.
My conclusion was, and
Americans were
no
focused on the
reasonable prosecutor would bring
FBI
this
surprise
case.
announcement it was still investigating Hillary Clinton's emails. But in the intelligence community, there was talk. At a security conference in Nova Scotia in late November, Senator John McCain was approached by a Western diplomat who'd seen the dossier, thought the reports of Trump's Russian entanglements deserved attention. McCain made a snap decision, sent an emissary to London to meet the spy.
It was somewhat old school. The source was waiting there at the airport with a copy of Financial Times under his arm, and they found each other, and it was a 24-hour trip. He went out there, met the guy, reviewed the documents, talked to him, got a sense of who he was, and went back and talked to McCain.
Within a day or two, Senator McCain had seen the dossier.
I did what any citizen should do. I received sensitive information, and then I handed it over to the proper agency of government.
December 9th, McCain gave the file to the FBI, says he didn't know the agency already had it. It would be weeks before American security agencies decided to share with the president and the president-elect. And now that they know, what on earth to make of these documents? The former Canadian intelligence officer who spent a decade on the Soviet desk doing counterintelligence says the allegations in the documents surely look like classic tactics. He sees some errors, some oddities, but says this has the feel of the real thing.
If it is a fake story, it was made by somebody who knows the game. If it is a true story, it is very, very close to what we've seen before.
It's all fake news. It's phony stuff. It didn't happen.
Could the allegations be false, made up by Russia's spy agency? Possibly, and possibly false for a reason.
It is also possible that the whole thing is, a FSB dirty trick, but bait the line with some interesting, maybe partly true information, but put a lot of misinformation there, wait for it to get out, and then discredit the news organizations, the law enforcement intelligence organization that may take it seriously.
And what if what's in these pages is true? Does that make this just trouble or treason? Without actual evidence, these are answers we may never get. Adrienne Arsenault, CBC News, Toronto.
Talk about the dossier dominated Trump's press conference, but it wasn't the original reason he called it. He was supposed to clear up lingering questions over ethics and potential conflicts of interest. For more on how he dealt with those questions today, here's Stephen D'Souza.
These papers are all just a piece.
Ever the performer, Donald Trump made sure he had props at his news conference today. Just a sample of the paperwork needed, he says, to separate Trump, the businessman, from Trump, the president.
So I could actually run my business. I could actually run my business and run government at the same time. I don't like the way that looks, but I would be able to do that if I wanted.
Trump says he'll hand over control of his business to his sons and another longtime executive. They won't do any foreign deals. Domestic deals will be vetted, and Trump will be in the dark for as long as he's in the White House.
He will only know of a deal if he reads it in the paper or sees it on TV.
Trump's vast holdings have raised concerns about how he'd avoid conflicts of interest. Today, he said he'd continue to own his golf courses, hotels, and office towers around the world, and will keep royalties from existing deals licensing his name. His lawyer says selling all of that would be impossible.
President-elect Trump should not be expected to destroy the company he built.
For controversial properties like his D.C. hotel, Trump's lawyer says money spent by foreign governments to stay there will be donated to the U.S. Treasury, as to avoid any appearance of accepting gifts from foreign states. While presidents aren't subject to the same conflict of interest laws as others, experts say Trump is breaking with presidential tradition by keeping his assets.
It does seem like he's doing the least amount he can do. He did not divest. He did not set up a blind trust.
Today's announcement also appears to contradict a promise Trump tweeted last month, saying, "No new deals will be done during my terms in office." O'Halloran says she sees a lot of ethics hearings on the horizon.
It definitely raises the concern that every tweet that he says a particular company or a particular issue may have an impact on his fiduciary interests.
Apart from conflicts of interest, Trump seemed more concerned about sending his sons an apprentice-style message.
And I hope at the end of 8 years I'll come back and I'll say, oh, you did a good job. Otherwise, if they do a bad job, I'll say, you're fired.
In a rare bit of public criticism, today the government's top ethics monitor called Trump's plan wholly inadequate and meaningless, saying that divestiture is a small price to pay to be president of the United States. Stephen D'Souza, CBC News, New York.